I'm delighted to introduce Kevin Lygo, the Managing Director of Media and Entertainment at ITV. I'll let Romilly introduce him in full in a minute, but he's a great figure in television down the years. We're delighted to have him here. And delighted that Romilly, an extremely well-known journalist and presenter on ITN, is able to take the role of talking to Kevin. So over to you, Romilly.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I am delighted to introduce Kevin Lygo, who, as we've just heard, is Managing Director of Media and Entertainment at ITV, or more succinctly put, one of the most powerful people in British television, responsible for ITV's output across news, drama, reality and entertainment on all ITV platforms, and in charge of a content budget of around £1 billion. He's here at a time when ITV is being widely lauded for the game-changing power of its drama after the success of Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, which we shall come on to in a little while. Other commissions during his time include The Real Full Monty, Liar, The Masked Singer, Dares Quiz, Manhunt and The Bay. He joined ITV in 2010 as Managing Director of ITV Studios, now the largest production company in the UK. But he started his career in TV as a general trainee at the BBC. He's also worked at Channel 4 as Head of Entertainment and Director of Television and Content, where shows such as Ali G, Brass Eyes, So Graham Norton, Deal or No Deal, One Born Every Minute and Shameless were commissioned under his tenure. This is a rare appearance at the VLV conference. In fact, I think I'm right in saying it is your...
Busting my cherry.
First one. So do have your questions ready, as there will be a chance during this session to put them to Kevin. He is also a man who is responsible for both the enduringly popular Love Island and one who has written a book called The Emperors of Byzantium, which may or may not be a bestseller, so who knows where this conversation will take us. Kevin,
yes.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
It's been quite the start to the year.
Yes, it has. Yes. No, we've had a very strong start, I think, primarily with drama. And I mean, if I just launch straight into Mr. Bates, which I hope most of you have watched, it would be good to say I knew it was going to be that big a hit, but I didn't. And we're very keen to make it. ITV has a long tradition of making true stories into entertaining and accessible drama from, you all know what they are. So I was very happy to do it. It was commissioned, of course, remember dramas are commissioned approximately 2 years before they appear on air. So it's quite a while ago now. And it was brought in by some producers that we work with, a very well-known writer, Gwyneth Hughes, and it was, I think, like a lot of the public, you knew of the story, you didn't know the whole story, of course, you in fact didn't realise how awful it all was, and when they pitched the show to myself and Polly Hill, Head of Drama, it was a very easy, quick, yeah, well, yes, let's just do it. So, 2 years later, the 4 hours kind of turn up on your desk, and you're thrilled as you see it. So that's why I decided to put it January the 1st, 2nd, 3rd and 4th of this year, to start the year with something good and quality and all the rest of it, and it worked. It points to a number of interesting things, I think, particularly for this group. One is a quintessentially British story made for by a British commercial PSB. Surprisingly, I suspect we've lost money on it, so it cost more to make than we have been able to sell it around the world and fund from our own normal broadcasting kind of levels. So it leads me on to what happened after it had gone out. There is no doubt that the challenge for all of us now in mainstream television is getting enough audiences to turn up on the night to watch anything you want them to. It's really, really difficult. So just, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, you would have expected a drama like this on BBC One or ITV to get 6-7 million viewers, maybe more if it was really grampy or had some big stars in it or something. Now, 4 on an overnight is about as good as you get for a new show. This is a challenge for us commercially, of course, because that's a lot fewer eyeballs than we would normally expect. But the plus side is that with the launch of ITVX for just about 18 months ago now, it is definitely easier for people to catch up, hear about it, find it, watch it at their leisure on whatever device they would like to. So what happened with Mr. Bates was, as I say, about 4 million, which is a good figure. It was under 4 million, but just was a good figure, but not stunning. And then it just snowballed, and everybody started talking about it, and the newspapers were writing, and everyone was outraged. And look, it was a very well-made drama. That's got to be part of the mix. And it was a story simply unflashily told with a very good cast of British actors without necessarily a great big star in the centre. And what then happened was, within about a month, 10 million other people had watched it on ITVX. And one of the harsh realities of studying what audiences do on a streaming service like ITVX is you know exactly how many people watched it, when they dropped off, how many watched from episode 1 to episode 4. And this is called a completion rate, which was new to me when we started, but now I'm very familiar with it. And I have to say with Mr. Bates, it was incredibly high. So something like 95% of people who watched episode 1 within a actually often a day or 2 days had watched episode 4. So that was a great sign for us. Perhaps more importantly for ITVX was that half of those people, some 5 million of them, had never used ITVX before. So we pulled in a whole cast of new people, some 5 million of them, who didn't really know what ITVX was, hadn't gone there, didn't know where it was. Lots of queries on the viewers' inquiries. How do I get this ITVX thing? Very simply, I'm pleased to say. So they found it, they used it, and for us, not only is that a new group of people coming to X, but when they're there, it's a good service, it's easy to use, it works well, hopefully in your homes, and they saw other things that, yes, they had a chance, rather annoyingly, to see over the last few years other dramas we've made, but they saw them for the first time because these were people who don't come to ITV very much. And so they saw other dramas and they then sampled that. So it was a kind of glorious win for us in all these different ways. And we were then inundated. I was just, my inbox was full of people saying, oh, I've got a miscarriage of justice. I mainly, and I'm not joking, half of them were about potholes. And so it was, right, potholes, okay. Well, if somebody can come up with a good story about potholes, we'll clean up. But the one that we had been thinking about that has been around for a while, of course, was the contaminated blood scandal. And that's a very serious issue and an extraordinary story, but a difficult story to capture. And so we thought, well, gosh, there really is an audience for these things if you get it right. Maybe we should have a go at this. We then heard, with Spies, that the BBC were doing it. So we thought, well, maybe leave it alone. And then we got a call from a well-known writer called Peter Moffat. And he said, look, are you interested in the blood scandal thing? And we said, yes, but I think the BBC are doing it. You're not doing the BBC one, are you? No. He said, I've just finished writing 8 hours for Netflix. And we said, oh, well, we're definitely not going to do it then, are we? And he said, no, they've just pulled the plug. And so, because I think on the grounds of it was a bit parochial. So we thought, hello. So in we charge, and we're just trying to get it together now, but we have absolutely every intention of making it because it's already written, although we need to change it a bit, for transmission next year. And but I think what it illustrates is what I missed the first half of Caroline's talk, but I suspect this terribly important factor in what public service broadcasting is, which is British-made content for British audiences. And this is a British story, although it has tentacles into the America where a lot of the blood came from and so on. And that for a streamer, and I'm not even criticising them, they can see internationally perhaps not of interest to them, and they developed it, good on them, but they're not going to proceed. We would proceed. The BBC, I'm sure, would proceed. So I think it's just quite heartening that that domestic stories, if you like, can find an audience. You can see the difficulty. It's not a difficulty for the BBC because they're loaded with money. Is the difficulty for us is, you know, Mr. Bates has made a loss of something like £1 million, and we can't continually do this. You know, of course, some things are very profitable on the channel, and some things aren't. But it's a challenge to be able to fund some of the things that aren't obviously of international appeal. Well, I mean, we're hoping with Mr. Bates, because it may cause such a furore here, that maybe sales will pick up, but there's no evidence of it yet. If you're in Lithuania, 4 hours on the British Post Office, not really, thank you very much. So you can see the challenges here. What have I just been blurring on?
Well, it's interesting to me as somebody who works in news with both of those stories over many, many years. It was really hard to get engagement with them on the news. People were aware of them, but it was hard to get people to mind in the same way. And yet, by dramatising them, it's had a completely transformative effect.
Yeah.
Why do you think that
I think
was?
it's just more accessible, it's more entertaining. You know, you've got an hour an episode, it draws you in all the drama tropes that we use to do this. So I think telling a story in a dramatic way with a bit of, you know, creative license and all the rest of it, it's not surprising that engages more than, I mean, the BBC, I'm sure, had done a documentary about that. I think we had, certainly there have been news reports all over the place. So I just think a drama can draw different people in and obviously just be more emotional about how you respond to it.
And I'm sure most people have watched Mr. Bates, but I think we have a clip that we can play showing some of its impact. It is really extraordinary, the impact it had.
Yes.
The government acting immediately in a way that they totally failed to do for years.
Yeah, they haven't paid people. No. And that's what, you know, we were going to obviously make a big do and have a celebratory dinner with Alan Bates and so forth. And he was the one who said, he's quite a doer, guys. He said, I don't want a celebration until we get paid. And quite right. And when is that going to happen? It seems to be interminable. But no, look, it's obviously had a really good positive effect. You know, when Alan's always a bit, no, I'm not sure about the drama, you know, whatever. And when we had a screening for all the people that were involved, and at the end, he was like, everyone was crying and clapping and all this, and he was like, yeah, I get it now, I see what you're doing, yeah. He said, my house doesn't look anything like that. And because it was the most dreamy cottage. House. No, I know, but that's directors for you, yeah.
And when you watched an early screening of it, were you aware this is going to have a real impact?
Yes. No, I thought it was good, and I thought it was emotional, and it was sort of just really, really quite simply but well told. And so you just have hope. But these days it is harder and harder to guess in advance now what something is going to do and whether people will turn up at all and all the rest of it. Because as was pointed out earlier, there is so much choice and competition now in your homes every night. And although I heard the professor say, but is the quality there? You know, everything that's ever been made you can watch now. And there is some wonderful stuff out there. It's quite hard to find, but you know, the competition is, none of us have ever seen anything like this. And that's the real pressure on the production community, on commercial broadcasters in getting sufficient audiences and the right audiences for various commercial partners to want to get at. That is the reason we're all a bit tense and nervous these days, but the BBC included.
The New Statesman wrote an article recently called "The Quiet Radicalism of ITV," looking
bless them, did they? Right.
looking not just at Mr. Bates, but also
the Chase thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, no, actually, it was ITV News and the sort of investigations they're doing about housing and things like that.
Right.
I mean, do you see that as an important part of ITV's remit?
Yes, I do actually. One, it becomes you know, there's both a sort of corporate part of ITV, and then there are a number of individuals that work in commissioning or producing or whatever who have bugbears and or special interests or whatever it is. And it's still, I think, rather good that this personal curation amongst responsible, talented people can have an influence. So, yeah, I think if you look at our current affairs documentaries over the last few years, you know, we do scoop up most of the awards. I think we are able, or I certainly feel a freedom to go for things, whether it's exposing what's happening amongst the Uyghurs in China, or the Russian doc that we did recently. Whereas maybe the BBC find this harder now, I don't know, but we do seem to be, I'm delighted to say, the leader in this sort of kind of old-fashioned, but finding stories of wrongdoing, corruption and everything around the world and in the UK. So yeah, I think we'll continue to do it. And you know, in all the ways, I think in the old-fashioned categorization of genres, which I heard mentioned before, is still valid in a way. It's a shorthand. But if you take something like religion, you know, what doesn't work today is a sort of, you know, live from St Thomas's Church in Tunbridge Wells. Those things, we couldn't really do those. But we can do a programme on the end of Ramadan, or the Hajj, and these are very, very impactful for specific audiences. So the response you get from the British Muslim community, for example, for these programmes is extraordinary and overwhelming. And how in Eid, the festival you have at the end of Ramadan with Iftar, is how families would come together, they would eat and celebrate, and then they'd all watch our TV show go out at 10:30. It was extraordinary. It was lovely to hear from a lot of British Muslims. So I think we still, you know, and as you said, I was, you know, trained at the BBC. There is this feeling of we've got to keep these public service values, but we have to update how we put them. So I think ITV has been very good about raising issues in Coronation Street or something, where you have a large audience that would never watch a documentary about a certain issue, but you weave it subtly and carefully into popular storylines or something, and it works. As well as we can do campaigns and everything. I always feel they can be a bit heavy-handed, but they do have an effect. Our Britain Get Talking campaign has had an enormous effect and been seen by, you know, 42 billion people or something. And so I just think we have to keep going with all these things and not sort of have wall-to-wall game shows or whatever it is.
So religious content, arts content, science content, that will continue to be a part of what ITV does. There is concern that a lot of that will get parcelled off to the BBC.
It's the old-fashioned, you know, the stuff we grew up on. People always quote Kenneth Clark, what's his name, Clark's Civilization. And, you know, I did some digging on that, and it went out on BBC Two, you know, 400 years ago, and it didn't rate at all back then when there were only 3 channels. And in Japan, when it was sold to Japan, they retitled it Some Aspects of Western Culture, which I thought was brilliant. But we grew up on this stuff, and John Julius Norwich in Turkey and things like this. I loved them as a child and as a young adult, but there just isn't the audience really for that so much anymore. When I took over Channel 4, I went to pay homage to the great Jeremy Isaacs, and we were chatting away, and he was saying, "Oh, I know you've got to do these game shows and things like that, but couldn't we just have a Brahms quartet in the afternoon?" And I said, "I think I'll send one round to your house, Jeremy, how about that? That's probably better." So we do miss some of these things that we grew up with, but honestly, the audience just isn't there, certainly in a way that makes sense for a commercial broadcaster. So we need to, yes, keep going, but present it in a way, it's a bit like, you know, hiding the pill in the dog food for your dog. Do you know what I mean? You've got to sort of not be didactic and hit people over the head with it. You've got to smuggle it in. And so that the responsibility is on us as individuals to maintain that sort of desire and commitment to doing some good.
And The media bill is going through the House of Lords. How important is that to the future of
It's very important. We've been influential in constructing it and so forth. And, you know, for us, there are important things like listed events, like prominence on these new platforms, which is vital for us to be in a good place. Because, you know, it used to be that there was some bloke up an aerial with a spanner and he just tweaked it and then the entire country got our programmes. Now you have to do so many different deals, so many different technological changes if you want to be on Samsung or Apple or on Amazon Fire Stick or whatever it is. So the complexities now of delivery of our programmes is much more complicated and costly than it ever was. And the cost of DTT is enormous, as we all know, as audiences go down on DTT. But we're still committed to it all. So it's just another, you know, kind of handcuff on us commercially to make all the programmes that we would like to make. I mean, you know, make no mistake, there is absolutely everybody at ITV is united in thinking what we want to do is have as much money as possible to spend on programming. And it's more expensive to make, more expensive to deliver, and advertising is going down somewhat, although we're having a bit of a flurry this year. So, you know, these are the challenges ahead of us. But we've got to, you've got to have hope, and it's not terrible yet.
That doesn't sound too optimistic.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
Generally, with the rise of the streamers, I mean, do you think the future of PSBs do you think that's financially sustainable?
Yes, it's a very complicated thing, and the kind of the maypole around which we all dance is the BBC, and so it's very important that the BBC is properly funded, independently kind of sits there, and all the rest of it. They drive you mad, of course, the BBC, but you know that's what they do. But for us and for Channel 4, I think we need all the help we can get. The advertising minutage thing is an interesting step into that. You know, some of the restrictions seem a bit old-fashioned to us, but I think everybody is willing us to survive, and things like Mr. Bates really help. And we made a drama following up after that called Breathtaking, which was about COVID and the national health, and it was a 3-part drama, again stripped across the week, that was written by a doctor who was involved in it based on her book, and with Jed Mercurio, who is a very experienced, established thriller writer. The two of them come together, and it was kind of crash, bang, wallop, and really emotional and rather brilliant. I was nervous about that because I thought, would I want to watch something and it's all mask acting and all that? And but it was such a compelling treatment and story, and we thought, yes, let's do it. Again, I'm sure it hasn't made money anywhere, but it was another example of something that I just don't think anybody but a public service broadcaster would do. So we were very pleased to have it. It did well in the end.
I read an article in The Guardian actually suggesting that it could change the dial in the doctors' strikes by swinging public opinion so far in favour of the doctors getting a better pay deal as a result of it. I think we've also got a clip we can show of that.
Oh, right. Breathtaking, it was called.
We will make sure the NHS gets all the support it needs.
Morning. Just had a call from LAS. Might be the first one.
I'm not going to make it home this weekend, sorry. It's madness. There's currently no PPE at all.
We're overwhelmed. The virus is always going to be ahead.
Trust the guidelines.
This is insane.
Bobby, where's the defib? Where's the gas trolley?
The public can be assured that we have a clear plan.
There's no plan.
Members of our team are wearing bin bags and going home wondering if they're going to die in the night.
Don't go there.
We're already there. You know, this thing is spreading. They just keep coming, but no one is giving up. Prepare for the worst, but hope for the best.
Breathtaking on ITV1 and ITVX.
public can be assured we have a clear plan. It's so startling, isn't
Yes.
it? The words of the politicians that we're so familiar with, but intercut with the scenes of what was going on in the wards. Were you worried, commissioning that maybe people were sort of weary of going back into that time, that it was such a terrible time?
No, definitely. And was it too soon? Is the timing right? All the rest of it. But it's a joy, I think, of, it wasn't a sort of 10-part series where you thought, oh my word, is this going to work? And the team, people often think, oh, it's all about the idea. The idea is the first step in any good show, whether it's an entertainment show or a drama or something. I am equally influenced by who is the team making this, because there are lots of ideas and they can be wonderful programs or terrible programs, whether it's a good or a bad idea. Honestly, it's a bit like novels. Quite often bad novels make very good TV or films, and really great novels don't. And because they are different things and they want different, television wants plot as much as anything. And so the team, as I mentioned, the team behind it we've worked with a lot. It's the same, Joe Mercurio writes Trigger Point, which is, 100 miles from breathtaking. But actually, in years to come, they'll be writing essays about what people have done, and they'll look at Jed and they'll see the similarities between in the technique of telling these stories, because you have to hold people. It's so important. We're all the same. If you're not grabbed in the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, there's so much else on. You're just going to leave. It's one of the great problems with comedy now. Comedy, I spent half my life working in comedy, and people were much more inclined to give it a chance. And now, if you don't laugh in the first 2 minutes, you go, oh, stuff this, I'm not watching it. And it's so difficult now for any channel to get a decent-sized audience to comedies to give it a chance. I remember I'm, that old that I was at the BBC when Only Fools and Horses appeared, and I can remember the first series, the review in, I can't remember what paper, was only a fool or a horse would watch this. And so I think, this is the challenge. We have to up our game in how we tell these stories, whether they're true or funny or just dramatic or whatever it is. But that's on us to keep drawing people in and entertaining them and grabbing them when we can.
I've been covering some of the COVID inquiry recently, and I'm always aware it's quite difficult to get people to engage with it. I should probably get Jed Mercurio to some of my scripts. Tell me about the scheduling decisions for these shows now that you've got ITVX as well. You back them strongly by putting them on consecutive nights on the main channel in January and February. But you are commissioning drama specifically for ITVX first.
We did at launch. We threw everything at the wall at launch to see, because this, although it may not appear, it is quite a different thing to schedule, if you like, a streaming service like ITVX or the iPlayer. And we've discovered many, many things in the way we did. So we tried everything from a period of exclusivity with a big show and publicising it, and having it only on ITVX. We then had, we would put it on ITVX for a few months and then put it on the main channel and see what happened. And we did all of this. And what I think we've arrived at is, it may seem obvious and I should probably be sacked for not realising it earlier, but we've got the biggest marketing platform in the country, and the way to get, if you take the view of what really matters is getting as many people as possible to your show, you put it on the channel and you make it all available on ITVX that day. And there is no doubt that's how you get it. And there is now beginning to be a different set of people watching streamers, and that includes the iPlayer and ITVX, as to linear television. And so the hope is you get a bigger group of people at the end of the day to watch every one of your shows, because it is a slightly separate group of people. It's not necessarily younger or ABC One-ish or anything like that. It's just some people like watching, plunking themselves down and saying, what's on the telly? Others a bit more proactive in thinking, right, I'm ready for something now, let me see what I can find on the streamers. And ITVX has to lodge itself into people's psyche of when you're making a decision about what am I going to watch tonight, that you'll give ITVX a really good chance. And part of that is not only what we put and the way we market it and all the rest of it, but the prominence issue on a Samsung telly. So that if you've got Netflix and Amazon and Apple, you've got ITVX there as well, and the iPlayer. And so that's really important because they can, if they want, put you on page 42, and you're not going to get many viewers if that happens.
And how has joining the streaming game changed your job and the way you think about your job?
There's
given you freedom to commission things that you wouldn't
we
otherwise have been able
thought
to.
it was, but you know, you learn the real power of and restrictions of your brand. So there's a curious thing that happens. So we'll commission a drama. We commissioned a drama called Cleaning Up with Sheridan Smith some years ago, 5 years ago or something, and it did well on the channel, and we had a catch-up service, ITV Hub in those days. It was a bit crap, and not many people watched it, but it did well on linear television because those were the days. And it cropped up on Netflix last week, #2 show on Netflix, and nobody knows it's ITV. So that sticks in your throat, as you can imagine. The other day, my daughter came down to me and she said, she'd been disappeared all day, and I said, what have you been doing? She said, I've been watching telly. Good. I said, good, that's great. Must be one of the few parents saying that to their children. But she's not a child, by the way, she's 22. And she said, I found this brilliant bloke, you've got to watch him, you've got to get him on ITV, he'd be great, honestly, he's exactly what ITV should have, because you're a bit old fuddy-duddy dad, frankly. And so I said, oh great, who's that? And she said, it's this bloke called Louis Theroux. I was going, okay, right, and that's my daughter. So you see the point here is people do discover things on different channels, and you know, you can find that you can badge it. If Netflix presents you something, some people go, oh, isn't it marvellous? I suspect if we'd shown Bridgerton, which was a huge phenomenon on Netflix, it wouldn't have done that well for us. Do you know what I mean? Because it was a much younger skewing audience and not what you'd expect from ITV. So we have to be we can't just give people Midsummer Murders every night, but if you stray too far, you're pushing at the boundaries of what you would expect people to come and to see from you.
Mm-hmm. And I think we've also got a tape to play of ITVX's highlights.
All right, a bit of ITVX
yes.
in case you haven't found it yet. Right.
The UK's freshest streaming service.
There you go.
Feels like quite a downbeat boast, that.
Yeah, does it? Yes, okay. Yeah, I don't know.
But the trajectory of ITVX has
Yes.
been
No, it's really
in the
good.
last
It's really
18 months.
worked. I wish we'd done it earlier. It is a wonderful thing and has brought new people to us. And you can't underestimate the amount of work in launching that. Basically, we got it within a year, I think, of going, let's do it. But the sort of technology behind getting it to work is beyond me. I'll be honest, but there are hundreds of engineers as we speak in a basement coding or something to make it all seamless. So that and the extra investment in programming was, a big move for ITV because it was going to come off our profit, which it did, which the city never liked, sort of thing. But it is going to be the future, and one day there won't be channels. There'll be. You'll turn on your telly or whatever it is, your toaster, whatever you're watching it on, and you will see this range of apps, in effect, that you go to or you don't. And the sort of EPG, it might be years away, by the way. You couldn't really guess. I think it'll last longer than everybody ever thought. Because I remember when digital channels came in, it was going to be the death of terrestrial and all this, and it clearly wasn't. So there's a lot of life in the old dog yet, but it is such an easier way and user-friendly way to watch the things you want to watch, to have it on any device you want, when you want, with or without ads, etc. So I think it's an absolute cornerstone of ITV's output now and definitely growing in the future. So it's growing exponentially every year. And advertisers, you can be more targeted with your advertising. You know, it's just a very efficient way of getting your programmes to people.
Life in the old dog yet, but ITV as a whole is clearly facing some challenges.
Yeah.
Pre-tax profits are well down. You've announced you need to find £150 million in savings. How will that affect what we see on TV?
Cut the news. Yeah, I think.
Well, actually, Times Radio was doing a segment this morning saying, is the era of the all-powerful newsreader over?
Yes, I saw that. No, surely not. No. I don't know. I bet they don't think they're all powerful. What was the question?
It was how painful will be the savings that you need to find across ITV? I mean, how will that affect what we see on television and what you do?
Well, in the first instance, we're trying to find every penny that we can not on screen. So we've got to turn over every stone in the office, so to speak, to make cuts there, to really, yet again, re-examine what it is we should do, what we don't have to do, what do we, how can we change the way we're doing things, what can technology do to help us, can AI, all this fear of AI, but can it help us make programs more efficiently and cheaper and all the rest of it. So I think we're working through it. It'll be an endless process, I suspect, but trust me when I say the last thing we want to do is to remove any spend on the program output, because that without that we sort of have nothing. So we have to protect that at all costs. But yes, it's difficult, and I suspect budgets will go down over time, as they are everywhere. I mean, you hear the BBC bleating about it, and yet they have all the money in the world. So why do they buy all that American all that stuff? I don't know. I have had a go at so many different BBC people about this. Why, they've just bought Suits, the thing with Meghan Markle in. You think, why? They outbid us, by the way. So you sort of think, well, what's that got to do with licence fee payers' money? I don't know. Anyway, that's their business. There we are.
Well, lots more I want to ask you about. We haven't touched on Ofcom yet, but I do want to give all the audience a chance to ask questions as well. Could you just, before you ask, say your name and where you're from, please? If I could start with the gentleman in the glasses over there.
Thank you very much, Kevin. I'm Neil Washbourne, an academic, also a member of VLV, and I'm very interested in popular public service broadcasting, and I'm doing research into Radio 2 listeners at present, precisely to figure out what they think of all these kinds of questions. And in the spirit of Sylvia Harvey's earlier question, I wonder if you could philosophise on something which is part of your job, which is, what is entertainment?
Oh my God. Something that entertains you. I would say for us it's, look, there's sort of pure entertainment in an old-fashioned sort of shiny floor sense that ITV has excelled at from time immemorial. So today it's Britain's Got Talent and The Masked Singer and Ant and Dec stuff and all that. I think reality television is definitely entertainment. So from I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here to Love Island to, we've got a new one starting next week or the week after called Fortune Hotel. And, audiences love this, so I think that's important for us to continue investing in and trying new shows and all the rest of it, as well as a big part of ITV is to maintain the existing hits. So whether it's Coronation Street or I'm a Celebrity in its 20th year, it's very hard to get new shows to hit those levels of audience. So keeping those alive, not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but edging them on each year is a very significant and quite unrecognised part of what lots of people have to do. So in dramas, I think what's on at the moment, Red Eye is in an entertaining drama. It's not really saying anything terribly profound. It's not Mr. Bates or whatever, but it's an entertaining drama that has started really strongly. I noticed on the first night, so it went out on Sunday night, and by midday Monday, 250,000 people had watched all 6 episodes. So poor sods hadn't gone to bed or something. But, that's a sign to us that, it's working because, people are being entertained by it. So I think that's everything's got to be quite entertaining. Otherwise, I think today people they might not come, they might not stay. And so, when you meet someone at a dinner party, you need to be quite entertaining, or they're just going to walk off and talk to someone else. So I think that not in the big, capital E way, but every show should be engaging and grip people, and ideally you want it to be so that somebody has watched it and then they want to go tell their friends about it, and then you've kind of scored.
The lady here with glasses.
Kevin knows me, but Sarah Thane, formerly ITC and Ofcom, and regulators even before that. First, a quick comment. It's absolutely lovely to know that the DNA of ITV is still doing the post office, the contaminated, I think of Hillsborough and the Birmingham pub bombings, and how brave ITV have always been in that regard, much braver than the BBC. Yes. So, congrats.
Even with Tony Hall walking in.
Congrats. Yes. The question I've got is, stroke of luck about Peter Moffat and the Netflix coming your way. You mentioned Jed Mercurio. How difficult is it going to be for you to, against the might of these streamers, retain that level of writing and performing talent? And do you need some assistance against the background of £550 million cuts?
Look, in the end, some people just follow the money. A lot of people don't. And what my experience of writers particularly is, they want to write the story they want to write. And if we can be the environment in which they can do that with help but not interference, with a sense of one being speedy, being quick, British writers understand what BBC or ITV is and what they're going for. It's when you hear stories about them pitching in America, it's completely different. It's really weird. It's quite fun, but it's all a bit meaningless. And so I haven't yet noticed that they have a resistance to working to us, or that our rates of pay, though stretched, are out of kilter. I think one of the difficulties is the streamers particularly, but it's like the old studio system in America. They can tie people up for a long time, and so they can just take someone out of the game for 2 years, and that's not great for us. That's something that the BBC and ITV never did in the past 30, 40 years. So we have to watch it, we have to be careful, but in the end, you have to make yourself attractive to someone who wants to make something good, and the more famous or talented or hot they are, the harder that does get. So Phoebe Waller-Bridge, a wonderful talent, given some massive check, can't blame her, goes off to Hollywood, disappears, sort of, as far as we're concerned. So, but she'll be back. So we just have to work harder at courting them and creating an environment in which they feel they can express themselves or tell their stories in the most in a way that they feel. They don't want to be totally, if you leave them totally alone, they always get indulgence and crap appears. So you have to, the best is a tension between a broadcaster and a producer or writer or whatever. So that's where we have to be, I think.
Lady right at the back.
Thank you, Catherine Knox, Joseph Rowntree Charitable Trust. I was just interested as a layperson who's not in the commercial world here to understand what kind of figures you need to get a commercially successful drama and how you manage that live versus on demand. So like what you've described about Mr. Bates seems very successful. Is that, I don't think you said it made money. So I'm just trying to understand What does that look like, and how achievable is it to make commercially successful dramas of that kind now?
Yes, there's a quite sort of binary correlation between size of audience and cost of programme. So if you were making, a chocolate bar, it would be the same thing. The challenge for us is that production is more expensive than it's ever been and gone up exponentially since COVID and all the rest of it. In come the streamers with all their marvellous things, but they pay crazy prices and have led to inflation. An unintended consequence of tax breaks is the price of everything went up to the broadcaster. Now, it was good for the producer. It was more expensive for me. But it's a good thing ultimately. But here we go again, the price has gone up. And I suppose for us, the 10 years ago, the BBC and ITV would have been fully funding most of what they did in drama terms, because dramas were made for £1 million, £1.5 million an hour, something like that. Now, almost the cheapest drama that's made is £2.5 million an hour, and the broadcasters still don't really put in. The BBC put in a bit more than us, but £1 million is the most we sort of go into, and that's per hour for a drama. So the sales organisation behind it, the producer behind it, has got to find, just to be able to afford to make the drama, as much money again at least, if not more, £1.5, £2 million, just to get it made and get their money back. So more pressure is put on BBC Worldwide or ITV Studios global partnerships and so on, and it just gets harder and harder. And what you have to watch as a British provider is that you're not leaning too far into, well, we'll get more money from America if we do it this way, and stray from what the sort of original intention is of the programme. So the economics are really tough. It's a long game. You need deep pockets, because if you are a distributor and you're putting money in, you're not going to see a return on that money for quite a while. And it is always a risk. I mean, showbiz has always been a risk, but more so than ever now. And for the first time, I am coming across dramas that we'd like to make that can't get the funding, and we don't make them. That was not, I don't remember that ever happening 5 years ago. So there is a shift.
And then you've got Netflix spending $10 million an episode on The Crown.
Yeah, so you can't compete with that.
Over here, please.
Hello, Anthony Wills, VLV trustee. You've talked a lot about ITV1 and you've talked a lot about ITVX. You haven't really talked about ITV2, 3 and 4. I mean, I do wonder, how are they performing? They don't seem to have they don't seem to be distinctive from one another. Are you getting the advertising? What is the future, or would you rather not say?
No, I always say, ITV3 is a wonderful service of using our own library in repeat terms of dramas, and does really, really well, and services a much older crowd of viewers, but is the largest digital channel in the country, has been for years. ITV2, I'm sure you're a Love Island fan, has got a distinctive sort of feel to it, and it is sold only on 16 to 34s. So the way the sales is worked, so ITV3 would be ABC 1s, ITV2 is 1634s, ITVB is for house persons, and ITV4 is mainly for men of all ages. So there's a lot of sport, a lot of fishing, a lot of stuff. They're run very effectively and quite cost effectively. They're not heavily, compared to the main channel, their budgets seem quite slow. But what you can do with these channels that you can't do on the main channel is you can put more niche programming that is targeted specifically at audiences. So Love Island, love it or hate it, would not have happened if we didn't have a channel like ITV2. Now you could argue you could start it on ITVX, but still we find the combination of a channel and the streaming service is the best way, as I mentioned before, to get audiences to come to things. So it's still, they still have a proper function. They're still commercial. They all make a profit. They're part of the output, but they are more targeted and niche. And certainly you are right, they are increasingly under threat because of streaming services.
Lady in the front row just here. A mic is just coming round.
Jill Allen King, founder member of VLV for 40 years now. And thank you, Kevin, for your presentation. I know I've raised it before about audio description, and I'm very pleased that you're doing it better now. Not enough, but 2 years ago I won the Pride of Britain Award, and that programme wasn't audio described, but I was pleased to say that they took notice and did it last year.
Good.
What I'm now really complaining about, and you've highlighted it this morning actually, is the background music. And you just cannot hear what people are saying when you've got all this background music. And we get this complaint, not just from blind people, but from people who are hard of hearing, and just people that want to just listen to your programmes and don't want to hear this continual background music.
Oh, heavens. Right. Well, I shall...
A lot of support for that.
Yes. I shall endeavour to change that as far as we can. You'll be pleased to know Simon Cowell rang me up yesterday to complain about the sound quality on BGT. I thought, oh, thank you. But I would say, look, it is a complaint that comes up, but it's quite inconsistent when you sort of look into it. But and look, I agree on some programmes I watch. I think, oh, can't they just pipe the music down? But look, it's a continuous process, and you're right to raise it, and we will assess it. But I'm glad that the audio description and everything is better than it was, because we do put a lot of effort into that.
I think we've got to wrap it up quite soon, but does anybody have a burning question? Yes, the lady there in green.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Roz Attil. I'm a programme maker, but I'm also a viewer. I just want to go back to Mr. Bates. The problem that I have with, this series and other series in that vein is that, to me, they're easy stories. They're stories that are known. The BBC did a very forensic, multi-episode podcast about the series, about the scandal, like years and years before this came out. But they're known stories. I think there's a woman over there who called them brave stories. My issue is that the concentration on these big known stories leaves less room for original stories from original talent or new writers, new talent. So I just want to know, what is your strategy for actually encouraging, new IP, new content, original content,
yes,
as opposed to kind of relying on these very big budget, investing money in these very, almost, that there's no doubt they're going to be successful because they are known IP, they're known stories. So, where is the investment in the new stories, the new talent?
I'd say, no, it's a good point. I'd say 90% of what we do is originated material from British writers, if we're just talking drama. And certainly with comedy, it's all new. So I remember we are a mainstream broadcaster. We make our money from getting big audiences and so forth. So I wouldn't say we just go for the big stories, honestly. And anything that is new and original, some of which really fail, and some of which don't, it is a risk, but we have a commitment to it. And as I say, it's quite a small percentage that's based on even, existing IP and based on a book or something like that. We don't do a lot of that. But true stories, and certainly true crime, we do, but honestly, it's not a substantial part of the drama output. If we spend £100 million on drama, I suspect we're probably not getting to 10 million on true stories. But also we have to look at the success of these things. You say it's obvious. Some of it isn't. We did a really good drama last year, this time, which was about Hillsborough, and just nobody turned up to watch it. And it was, honestly, it was really good. And so it isn't always slam dunk. And the Post Office, yeah, retrospectively, of course it did well. Well, it could have not done well. And so there is still a risk and so forth taken with these things. And it was it was a British writer making sense of the story. But I think you need to look to smaller channels, sort of BBC Two, Channel 4, for stories that are more risky as far as their subject matter or the way they're told, or new experimental ways of making drama, or something that's very different. I think that's quite hard for us to do because it's unlikely to attract an audience of scale.
I'm sorry, I know there are more questions, but I'm being given wrap-up signals. Just quickly before you go, Andrew Neil said yesterday Ofcom needs to grow a backbone.
Oh.
Do you agree?
What do you want me to say to that? It is odd, the 11 warnings or whatever it is to GB News, but then nothing. So I don't know what's the point of a warning. I quite like a warning then. But no, I don't know. I think it's difficult for Ofcom, but they've got themselves in a bit of a pickle over some of these things, and they just need to have some clear thinking and take stock and make a decision.
Kevin, it's been very interesting. Thank you very much for your time. We could have gone on much longer. Thank you for coming.